Hello, my friend. Welcome to the Altar of Stars. I'm very grateful that you found your way here. My name is Teagan West. I'm a ritualist, astrologer, drum maker, and ancestral lineage healing practitioner on Haudenosaunee land, so-called upstate New York. And my own ancestors come from Ireland, Syria, Lebanon, Sicily, and Anishinaabe territory in what is now known as Canada. And my ancestors are a big part of my work and the readings that I offer here. So they're a synthesis of astrology and divination, but also animism and land connectedness to form this kind of intersection of cultural repair through these ancestral knowledge systems. And so if you like what I share here, you can find my work over on SUBSTACK at the Altar of Stars, where there's a pretty big archive at this point of weekly astrology readings in the form of podcasts that I've been sharing for a couple years, as well as tarot spreads and different ancestral rituals for each of the Wheel of the Year holidays or the new and full moons every month. So find me over there if you're interested in going deeper. But yeah, I hope that you enjoy this reading, and if you ever desire to work together one-on-one, there's opportunities to do that. You can find the links for that in the show notes. But yeah, enjoy, take good care of yourselves, my friends. Thanks for being here. Hello, my friend. Welcome back to the Altar of Stars. This is the week ahead reading for the week of May 24th, 2026, and I'm actually going to go all the way through into next Sunday, May 31st, because we have a full blue moon occurring next weekend. And it occurs right at that cusp between Saturday and Sunday, at least in Eastern time, on Turtle Island time. Because it's occurring at like 4:45 a.m. So I want to weave that into this week's reading because I'm already feeling that full blue moon's wisdom. There's been quite a few, like Gemini season hot takes and like mind-opening moments that have stayed with me. I actually made a list of some of the just like one-liners that I was thinking about or that came up in conversation with others or that others said to me over the past week. So I want to bring in some of those. And here's what I want to start with. I'm going to start with the hot take and then spend the entire time coming full circle. But the biggest thing is I was just sitting down with the week ahead and specifically just like having my eye on that full blue moon in Sagittarius was this really poignant sense that we spend so much time, us gorgeous little humans spend so much time looking towards that great horizon, looking beyond, looking into the beyond. And this is one of our gifts. Having the imaginal faculty to vision and project into the future. It's an incredible technology that we have to be able to do this. But we spend so much time gazing off into some distant horizon and visioning into space that we start to lose the plot. And we start to miss what's right in front of us and what's right under our nose. And it creates this tension of longing and yearning for some perpetually out of reach goal or vision or reality that creates a constant state of dissonance in our present moment experience. It creates a constant split because we're not paying attention to what's right under our nose. We're not really giving energy to what's working. And we're not embracing and actually taking good advantage of what's right here with us already. Like what's already working, what we already have in our favor. The good things that are right here in our very hands. And it creates this idleness where we have so much. Our hands are filled with so much in this present moment, but they're idle. They're not working with it because we're too busy projecting out into some great beyond. And I do feel, without going on a whole soapbox about it, that projecting ability is our conditioning. Like, at least for me, from the moment I came into this world, I was taught to like dream big and vision and always be in this state of projecting into the future, like 10 miles ahead, 10 years ahead of where I was at any given point in my upbringing. But I was never really given the tools, or my attention was never really drawn to like what's right here in my own hands, which is in most cases what really matters, is what's right here, right now. And so for me, what I'm sensing about the full blue moon, or just this moment in general, is like, how do we hold both of those faculties at once and use them to their best ability, to the best of our ability, in the way that actually bridges the gap that is so often a split in our system, that actually, at least how I've seen it play out in my life, creates like, oh, I'm not doing anything. It creates such a split that my visions and dreams are so far out of reach, and what I have right in my own hand isn't being utilized, and neither process is coming to fulfillment truly. And so for me, it's like finding the interface, syncing up the present and that projective imaginal faculty to be able to work together and utilize both at their meeting place in this moment. So I'm starting off with the hot take because honestly, if you've been here for a minute, so much of like the information that's coming through the field is what the astronomical movements are producing, in my experience, right? It's like, okay, that's happening, and it's creating this kind of energetic or consciousness moving through the field of our reality and through our bodies. And so, I'm sure I'll get through my list of hot takes by the end of this. But that was just the one that really stood out to me the most as we enter into this week. And I sense this week there's some points of tension, there's some points of conflict. So now I just want to give you the play-by-play of what's happening here. So welcome to Gemini season. For those of you out there that love this energy, welcome. Some of y'all love Gemini season, and I think it's so cute. I think it's so adorable. I don't have any Gemini in my chart, but I have so many beloved Gemini placements in my life. Like some of my dearest beloveds have that. It's just like, it's such a beloved frequency to walk with, and if you know, to know it is to love it. So welcome to Gemini season, the busy bees, the pollinators. And we had that Uranus Cazimi on Friday, which I'm so curious how others experienced that. If it did, my projection last week, and I'm recording this not having experienced the Cazimi moment fully yet, my projection was that it actually finally welcomed Uranus into Gemini. It was the formal ribbon cutting ceremony as Uranus enters into this realm and territory. So curious how that landed for y'all. But as we start off the week, we have a series of aspects occurring between these newly initiated planets. So if you remember and you were around last week, we had multiple ingresses occurring all at once in the same week. Now, something I didn't really emphasize is how rare that is for all of the personal, inner planets to be crossing a threshold within days of one another, in some cases, on the same day as each other. That shift of energy, for it to happen all at the same time, it's quite rare, and it changes how we are interfacing with our day-to-day life in pretty major ways. I've definitely felt it. I have been enjoying Mars in Taurus, if I'm being honest with you. It has been helpful for me to slow down a bit. Venus in Cancer also, I think, tenderized the relational field in a helpful way. I feel that these energies are slowing us down enough to remind us of our own humanity and how we really want to be relating with the world around us, rather than, it's the difference between relating from reactivity, which I think that there was plenty of that through early spring, and a shift into relating from a more informed, intentional, responsive state, right? Like I was saying, the slowing down affords us the ability to be more intentional about how we're responding to the conditions in life around us. And when I talk about relating, when I talk about the relational field, I'm not just talking about human to human. I'm talking about the more than human world that's all woven into this, right? So it's like how we're experiencing and engaging with everything. I feel that shift has been there's a little bit more sensitivity in the sensibility, you know? But as we enter this week, many of those planets that crossed the threshold are starting to ping the major players. They're starting to ping the outer planets. And this relationship, this intersection is important because it's where the day-to-day, the microcosm, begins to interface with the macrocosm, or the larger karmic conditions of the arena that we're going to be dealing with and participating in here for some years, right? Like between Saturn and Uranus and Pluto setting the stage for all of this air and fire energy, the inner planets and their movements are informing how we interact with those larger energies. And, I picture these like double wheels. It's a specific game at a casino. I don't know what it is. But there's like the inner wheel that's turning, and then there's the outer wheel that's turning. And the places where those two dimensions of reality intersect is really our lived experience. It's how we're participating. So I sense, this like pinging back and forth that's helping us to pivot and recalibrate. Recalibrate, thank you. That is the word that I feel is this week ahead. Recalibration. So let's stay with that for a minute. There's the first stage of recalibration that is like, oh, okay, the energies have changed. I'm functioning a little bit differently. And then there's the second stage of recalibration that opens up choice. It opens us up into agency, into curiosity, and into the imaginal faculty that's like, okay, now how do I want to continue pivoting, changing, interacting differently? The first part is almost like those conditions are shifting us, right? It's like, whoa, okay, the tide changed and I'm being pulled into this new way of moving. And then the second wave is like us shifting even further, like clicking into place a bit with the new conditions that are at play. It's like the action and reaction, or call and response. And the recalibration, I feel, is this, I actually feel a lot of like stop-start energy this week, like push-pull, where there's the impulse to move differently, but then there's the pulling back to say like, okay, I want to think about this a bit. I don't just want to like, if I try to move too fast, I start to crash around in it and I lose the plot. So this is something that keeps coming up, is like moving in such a way that allows us to take action, but not lose the plot. And the stop-start energy, it's like one step forward, two steps back. That's really what it is, right? One step forward, two steps back. That is how we actively recalibrate. Like that's how we take action, notice then how that impacts reality around us. So it's less of a stop in a like stunted growth kind of way, and more in that informed call and response, like one step forward, two steps back. That's the recalibration. So just like that, at least that's what I'm feeling in my body right now as some of these aspects occur throughout the week. So we start off on Sunday, the 24th of May, with a sun sextiling Neptune. I feel this gives us a little bit of like, this is where that Gemini sun gets creative and gives us some vision and like activates something. And I feel something is actually being activated in our like imagination faculty that's like, oh, I forgot that I can use this and like start to, it's this energy of being an idea generator, and how sometimes there's we have the idea and we're just working on it, we're following through. And then there's moments where this more cardinal energy kicks in and we remember we can like contribute more to the story. And so I feel there's this like bing ability with the sun sextiling Neptune that brings something into focus, something that's been kind of hovering in the imaginal or the unmanifest realm for a minute here, and now we see it, and that's one of those stop start moments where it's one step forward to like receive the download. I hate that word, but it is helpful in this example, to receive the insight. And then we take 2 steps back and we're like, okay, what happens if I just like let this continue to marinate and inform what wants to happen here, right? And then on Monday, there's an immediate next step, next like layer of the onion peeled back as the sun squares the nodes, which are at the very, like, I think 4 degrees of the Virgo Pisces axis. They're getting to the very, very, very end of their journey through Virgo Pisces. This is kind of like the next couple months here are really a phasing out of everything we've been dealing with for at least the past year or 2. Just take that in for a moment. We are reaching that threshold, we're reaching that moment of the year where we are really starting to phase out of all of the stories and cycles that have been running through our system for the past year. We're preparing to shift gears. It's like the moment where the guy that does the train tracks is like screeching that lever to shift the track. We're at that point in the year, honestly, where he's like, he's getting it. He's getting it. For some reason, I picture like a very small man with a hat on that does that job with suspenders on. But he's preparing to shift the tracks. But before we, it's like the train is still coming down the line, and this sun squaring the nodes is one of the last aspects that's going to occur between the sun and the nodes before they shift into the Leo Aquarius axis. So it offers us a moment of insight, right? We have to consider that the sun is a luminary. So whatever aspects it's making, it's bringing awareness. It's illuminating something. It's shining a light, quite literally. And this is an interesting aspect in particular with this whole theme of losing the plot, because I find when the sun squares the nodes, when most planets square the nodes, there's a sense of checking in with the plot, right? So much about the nodal axis is that like river beneath the river, this through line that runs through the other conditions that are occurring. It's like the invisible thread. I think of in the subtle anatomy of the body, the nadis, the channels throughout the system. Most people know like Ida and Pingala and Sushumna nadi, but there's thousands of nadis that actually run through everything in reality, and it's these invisible currents of energy that run through everything. My teacher used to say, like, if you, I know it's kind of graphic, but it's like if you cut open a body, you wouldn't see the nadis. They're subtle rivers of energy that run through everything. But they're fully enmeshed with all bodies, right? They're fully integrated within material reality as we know it. And so I find the nodal axis to function quite like a nadi in the collective field. It's like there's all these planetary bodies that exist in material reality that are impacting the other bodies in space, right? That's what we can see and touch and know. But then there's this invisible current. And the quality it takes on is often interwoven with where in the sky that axis is running through at any given point. It's like an energetic current that runs through everything. So I say that because when I think about, we can consider at face value what losing the plot means. But there's two layers to this that are important to differentiate. The one is the part of the plot that we know, that we can see and feel, and we have a very wrought ego investment in. The plot that we can tell ourselves, that we can write down in our diary. This is where I'm headed. This is what I want. This is my vision of the future. That's the plot that we know. The more important thing is the plot that we don't. The plot that we don't see. The river beneath the river, that through line, that undercurrent, which to me has more of a karmic implication to it. It's that subtle layer of reality. Perhaps we might consider it to be more of like the dharmic urge of creation to move towards, move in a given direction. And so much of that as magical practitioners is what I feel we're working with, is tracking that plot that isn't so readily available. It's not overt, it's covert, right? It's sensing and feeling those subtle energies, those invisible currents, as they weave through creation, as they weave through us as impulse towards something, right? It's that kind of dharmic urge, that movement towards something. And so the interesting piece that I feel with the sun squaring the nodes on Monday is this ability to get our finger on the pulse of that hidden current that is, like, in many ways the real plot line, where these two channels that run somewhat parallel to each other, like the conscious and the unconscious, that are both interweaving as this kind of beautiful DNA matrix through all of creation. They start to synthesize for a moment, and we catch the reality, and which affords us the ability to recalibrate our orientation, our directed goal towards that further outcome, where it's like, okay, I can sense that deeper karmic undercurrent, that plot line that is running through the one that I am consciously aware of. And I get like a glimpse of it so that I can recalibrate how I'm oriented in accordance with moving in that direction, or that orientation of my will. I know what I'm saying might not make sense logically, so don't try to understand it that way. So much is like really visual about this week ahead, and feels very subtle, if I'm being honest. Like, that was the biggest thing that I kept feeling, is like, there's the things that are easily trackable at face value, and then there's everything else. And it's actually everything else that we want to be interested in and we want to be watching for. All of those readily available lines and plots are just a surface level symptom of all of these deeper, subtle workings that we can, if we're really paying attention, we can catch the current. And I do think that the sun bringing this illumination on Sunday, Monday, affords us a moment of that, where it's like, like it. And this is the thing, I'm talking in abstraction because it actually is very subtle in the felt sense, where it's like the impulse bubbles up from below, especially when we're dealing with the nodes. It comes quite mysteriously. It might not come so overtly as we'd prefer it or expect, as our mind would prefer it. It's like it comes in a dream or an impulse from the body to be like, okay, I'm realigning, I'm recalibrating, because I get the sense that this is actually where I want to be headed. So that's occurring on Monday, and then later that day, same day, Monday, May 25th, Mars is going to square Pluto retrograde. A Mars-Pluto square is tense. It is tense. It breaks something open. It's an edge. It's uncomfy. And of course, like I mentioned, this is the newly initiated Mars in Taurus. Just learning this territory, just feeling it out. And I picture this Mars in Taurus that's just like moving slow, felt sense response, like a bull in the forest, just moving and listening, right? And there's some stuff in the woods. There's the presence of other things that this kind of baby bull has not really learned about yet. right? It's like, it's not in a loss of innocence sense, but it's the reality that there are spooky things in the forest of this life. Like there's things that are right in the periphery that actually confronting them is entirely unsettling. And that can be in a literal or, the metaphorical forest of our life. And so I sense in this moment too, Mars is discovering that edge where there's something that we haven't seen or haven't wanted to see in the landscape of our present moment that we do need to be aware of. And this aspects between Mars and Pluto can be quite jarring in that regard. They can be quite forceful even in how much we're having to confront the things that maybe flew under the radar or have been looming in the periphery. But like I spoke about a couple weeks ago, this also brings about the conversation of fear and the machinations of the shadow, where when we push something out of our awareness, when we are reticent to look at what's there, we actually give it more power and more energy, right? We allow those things to be blown out of proportion. And so I sense in this moment too, Mars is encouraging us to look fully at what's there in the periphery, whether that's in the collective body or our personal life, which are both implicated by this kind of aspect, to see what's there as a means of popping the bubble of fear. And there's a moment where it stings, right? There's a moment where the antidote feels like a poison. There's a bite. And it's what is required to actually get to the other side of that metabolic process and really digest and right size what's in our landscape at this current moment. And I just have the sense that this will be implicated at a collective level too, knowing Pluto retrograde is involved. There's something prickly about that. And so much of Pluto in Aquarius has already brought a lot of light into the shadows and forced us to confront things that no one wants to see. No one wants to deal with the horrors and the perversion and the really fucked up things that are very much a part of this reality. But at the same time, it's you have to take your medicine if you want things to change. And the medicine is bitter. That's a conversation I've been having with folks lately who are having existential crises about how much is being uncovered. And it's too much, too fast, kind of traumatic for certain people's psyches. I get that. And I'm leaned back in a space where it's things thrive in the darkness. Things thrive in the shadow world, out of view of the light of awareness. That is the machination of the interplay here between light and darkness, right? And so bringing it to what's occurring Monday and then Tuesday, the sun, yet again, we have a lot of solar aspects occurring this first half of the week. On Tuesday, the sun is going to trine Pluto retrograde, and I think in some ways help to integrate that edge that Mars confronts us with on Monday. It's okay, we need to look, and then the sun brings the illumination that helps to, in some ways, integrate into our lived awareness what it is that we're seeing, what it is that we're confronting. It's digesting the bitter medicine, metabolizing the harsh truths so that we can move with greater awareness, so that our movements can be more informed, right? As harsh as it is at times, when the truth is revealed, it's also relieving to me because it's okay, now I can actually interact with reality. If there was something being concealed from my purview, I wasn't actually engaging with the full scope of reality. I wasn't moving from an informed place that took in the full account, the full picture. right? So there's a degree in which I feel a little bit of like encouragement from the sun, especially the sun in Gemini, who's mutable. Like, it's like, okay, catch up. Like, things are changing. Our stories got to change too. We got to recalibrate. We have to be constantly reattuning to the task at hand, to the conditions at play. And if you don't have the full picture, you're not able to reattune. And so I feel the function of these sun aspects and these Pluto aspects are like helping us to actually see the full scope of what we're dealing with in this moment at a collective, but again, also I feel at a deeply personal scale. It's like, whether that's just within the machinations of your own mind, where you're seeing what was like hidden in the corner out of fear or shame or whatever else, the things that you didn't want to look at. And I've been experiencing this a little bit already, and I feel in some ways relieved to know that there will be a little bit more of the plot unfurling this week, because the sense is like, I think I said this a few weeks ago, and a client said it to me the other day, where she was like, I really resonated with that piece about, like, it's a good sign when you're sick of yourself. It's so real, because there's actually something incredibly motivating about that. I don't want to be stuck anymore in the familiar hamster wheels of my own inner world. So the first step is being like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm tired of seeing myself go down the same path and sound like a broken record. That's great. It's a great sign when you're ready to like break from that momentum. And then what, right? That's where we actually have to level with ourselves and kind of like fully look at our own reflection and reckon with the things that are keeping us stuck. And that's what I feel the shift into the latter half of the week, that's what I feel is afforded. It's like, okay, now with these moments of awareness and what I feel is like maybe a little bit of breakthrough, even though there's a fine line between breakdown and breakthrough, right? It's like, it requires friction. It requires agitation and tension to like break something open. The egg doesn't crack from idleness. It cracks from something literally like pressing out fully and pushing for life to occur. So there's a certain amount of like tension that's required to actually break out of patterns. And it requires friction, right? So I feel that the latter half of the week helps us to see the ways, truly see the ways in which we're stuck, right? I think I've made my point there. There's a huge raven outside my window in the tree, just chilling. So let's get into the latter half of the week here before the full blue moon. The only other thing that's noteworthy is that on Thursday, May 28th, Venus is going to square Saturn. Double cardinal energy in this square, right? Of course, it has to be same modality with a square. So Venus is in Cancer and Saturn's in Aries. Something that I always find to be true about aspects between Venus and Saturn is that kind of vow energy that I'm always going on about. Making a promise, making a commitment. But in doing so, I want to say that the deeper thing happening is actually like kind of signing a contract or making an agreement with life at a deeper level. And I talk about this all the time, but so many I believe all relationship is a set of agreements, whether that's between two people, our work, the spirits. All relationship requires agreements. Now, whether or not we are conscious of what those agreements are is a whole other story, right? And that's often the case. It's an unfortunate thing, I think, about our world and our conditioning is that I wasn't really taught to be intentional about the agreements I make with others. And there's so many subliminal energies that run through the relational field that aren't tended to and aren't honored and acknowledged that can really muddy the contract and make it all very confusing. You see this a lot in like the modern dating world. Like there's all of these hidden agendas, which are still even if one-sided, a form of an agreement. And the reality is, when two parties come together, human or otherwise, right, each of them is carrying a certain set of like desires, outcomes, expectations that inform the agreements that are being made. And we also make these agreements and set those agendas within ourselves, like with our relationship to our dreams and our goals even. So much of it is the expectations, the narratives, the desires that we have hidden beneath the surface level relationship that's being formed. And so I feel with Venus in Cancer squaring Saturn in Aries, there's a reality in which it's like a moment to check in and renew our contracts, renew our agreements that we have with whatever's most present in our life. And I will say that this is much more specifically informed by the houses for you personally that are ruled by Aries and Cancer. Like, I know that fellow Scorpio risings out there, in whole sign this will be the same for you. Aries in the 6th house, that's where Saturn is like signing off on the contract, right? Or I should say that's where Saturn is making the contract. And then Venus in the 9th house is where Venus is actually like signing on from. And so it can be helpful with this particular aspect on Thursday, the Venus-Saturn square, to know the relationship contextually between your Aries and Cancer house. How's that informed by what's coming up here? Because whatever's happening between those two areas of your life is something to take seriously. And ideally to be aware of and intentional about. What are the agreements between those areas of your life, and how might you want to renew them? How can they be recalibrated for where you're at right now? And I think that this does have something to do with our projected goals and dreams for the future. It feels like this is the aspect that can afford us a bit of this synchronization between us gazing off in the distance, like I was talking about at the beginning, and then what's actually in our hands right now, like what we have to work with. It starts to bridge that gap. And we can be really intentional and informed about that. So just considering where there's a renewal occurring, and I will say too, if you have, I think this is happening at like 11 or 12 degrees of Aries and Cancer. So if you have 11 or 12 degree placements in any of the cardinal signs, including Libra and Capricorn, right? They're folded in to this agreement. They're folded in there. So consider the dialogue that's occurring. That feels complete to speak to for now. And that's mainly the astrology of the week. So first half of the week is like some agitation, some things getting stirred, some awareness burgeoning in the name of liberatory work. You know, that this is the cross the hill I will die on is like the truth will set you free. That does not promise. There's no promise in there about it being comfortable or pretty. It does its liberatory work, and sometimes it requires a little bit of a bite at first to get there. But we get there. We get to the other side of it, you know? It's like Britton LaRue talks about, what did she say? Inconvenient truths or something like that, where it's like you realize something and it's so true that your immediate response is like, fuck. It's like seeing something that is actually inconvenient to see, because it means you got to change, you got to shift, and maybe you're not ready to. It's something that you like, it wasn't on the docket for shit to tend to. I can just sense that maybe there's a little bit of that in the astrology of the week. Maybe not for you, but considering Pluto in Aquarius's placement and what that's been doing in our personal and collective life, I could imagine an inconvenient truth or two coming up for us. And so the real question is like, that's the thing about inconvenient truths, is you can roll with it. You could take it in and be like, damn, okay, wasn't really expecting that today, but I guess now I gotta recalibrate with this in mind. Or you can hold off and kind of deny it and keep it at bay, which isn't really helping anyone. It's just prolonging the suffering. Right? And so you always have choice in it, but it's whether or not it's really timely for you to take action on what you're aware of now. To see it is to free it, baby. Never forget. And I think that the latter half of the week with that Venus-Saturn square helps us to actually recalibrate accordingly with what it is that we've learned. Because it requires a certain level of awareness to then say, we got to know why or how we're recalibrating our agreements to come from an informed place. So the first half of the week gives us a little bit of insight that then we can act on with the Venus-Saturn square. And remember that whenever Saturn's involved, this isn't a flash in the pan kind of moment. This is something that has long-term implications, and I think for the best. I think it has our best interest in mind. I think all of it does. Even if it bites, you know. I think I've been thinking a lot about unfortunate circumstances actually being a hidden form of protection. You know, like we didn't want, it might not be pleasant, the stuff that happened to us that was shitty. You know, when I retroactively think about my life and the stuff that I went through that sucked, you know, that still lives in me, like, damn, that sucked. I'm still kind of not over it because it sucked so bad, you know? And this isn't to sugarcoat it or bypass the suffering, but to like earnestly reflect on it, because I tend to be a person that can really mire in the stuckness in past experience. That fixed energy is strong in me. And, you know, when I reframe it in such a way where it's like, what if that was a form of protection? Where can I see the evidence for that actually in my life? Not from just a haphazard place. Like, really take a good look and consider, man, this might have really been trying to help, even though it sucked. Where can I see the evidence for that in my life, right? It's interesting to ponder the orb of that. So I'll leave that there because I want to shift attention to the full blue moon. Now, in previous years, around Gemini season, and then, of course, the full moon in Sagittarius that occurs in Gemini season, y'all have heard me talk about the personal mythology, because this is really the axis of Gemini and Sagittarius. In my experience, it awakens us to the reality that life as we know it is built from a series of stories that we carry about ourselves and the world. Some of those stories were inherited, most of them were, and then some of them were born of our own response to the conditions at play in the larger context, right? There's this fine line between just going down the rabbit hole of like main character energy here that I don't want to slip into, because the real heart of it is like becoming awake in the dream, becoming lucid, becoming conscious within the story, right? There are many skillful directors throughout time that have been able to like break the third wall, as it were, and actually reflect an experience of a main character becoming awake in their own reality, in their own dream, right? And this is something that's available to all of us. It's really very much a faculty of how this reality seems to work. I don't want to pretend to understand anything about it, but in what I understand from the Vedic tradition and my background in that, there's so much about the ahamkara, I am the doer, the investments that our ego has in the story that we're living out. And so much of it, and I talk about it all the time, but if you change the story, you change your life, right? You change how you're participating. You really are starting to pluck the threads of your own karmic undoing, which is powerful work. It's also very challenging because you realize it's just kind of a bird's nest of all these other threads that are bound up in one narrative. But I share this because I have really been feeling with this full blue moon in Sagittarius that as we're so busy distracting ourselves, gazing into some great horizon, there's so much going on in this very moment that we're bound up in, that's actually got us in a straitjacket, unable to move towards that great blue moon horizon. And this is the tricky interplay between mind and story. And something that has been on my mind, tricky, are a few, let me see how I want to articulate this. The essence of it is like, it's been right under your nose the whole time. The dissonance that I've been speaking about, where we split ourselves from present into the imaginal, which, there's a gift to this, which is the gift of Jupiter. That's where I want to start. Jupiter as the ruler of this full blue moon in Sagittarius. Jupiter currently exalted in Cancer, which is a blessing and a curse. Because the blessing of Jupiter is the ability to use our visioning power. I love the way Austin Coppock talks about Jupiter as a gas giant, which really reflects its more esoteric principle. You can't stand on the surface of Jupiter. It's a gas giant. If you tried to stand on Jupiter, you'd be sucked right to the center by its gravitational pull. But from the center, you would have this whole world around you that's been born of just pure vision. It has no tangibility to it. It's just made of gas, right? But there's an essence of Jupiter here where it's not interested in the tangibility. It's interested in the visioning power, in the ability to participate in the dream state. And so that's the first piece, is it affords us the bhavana, the empathic imagination, to be able to feel into and dream into some unknown future. And so much of Jupiter is very mage-like to me, very magical, where it's it's all in your head. You just have no idea how big your mind is. You have no idea how big your head is. It's the whole field of our reality that's being projected out around us. And when we become awake in the dream, when we become conscious of that power, of that bhavana, of that empathic imagination, we remember that we have the ability to impact reality through our mind alone and through our visioning power. And so much of, without going down a whole other tangent here, so much of my own relationship to magical work is sympathetic. It's feeling and moving from that place of heart, from the waters, from the emotions, and letting that actually infuse the thoughts, the intentions, with the will to assert it in the world. If you can feel it at a heart level, you can create something from that, right? You can impact reality from that sense. And so Jupiter affords us this ability to participate in that dreaming, visioning, empathic imagination, right? I do have on my Substack, if you want to hear more about bhavana and that from the tantric system, I do have a talk that I did, very preliminary, amateur hour, but it's up there, just amusing on it from what I've been taught about that topic. It's fascinating to just riff on. in how we want to use this faculty we've been endowed with, right? So that's the blessing of it. But the curse is, of course, the gas giant conundrum. It has no body to it. It's all gaseous material. It's like air and ether element and a gravitational pull. That is the nature of vision. It's air and ether element and a gravitational force, that assertion of will, which I find to be more of that like Mars and Scorpio energy, right? Like giving it an engine through the emotions, the assertion of will. But the shadow side to this is that we have the lofty vision, we have the ability to project 1,000 times in the future, but we're missing the tools to make it happen. It's kind of the essence of wishful thinking, you know, and I think that it's the trap of like manifestation culture or affirmation culture, New Age spirituality, where it's like, if you can dream it, you can do it. But my ancestors would say, okay, but also chop wood, carry water, you know, like that's great. But also like get your hands in the dirt. That it's both. This is the interplay between Jupiter and Saturn. And interestingly, the full blue moon is in a weak sextile with Saturn. So there is something here. That's what I'm getting at. There is an interplay between that visioning capacity and then how we synthesize it into tangibility, how we make something real from it with our own hands, the effort that we have to put in. And to me, it's all a collaboration with the mystery. It's like whispering to the spirits that you have this dream. And it's like, okay, I'm going to do this. Can you help me with this? I'm going to do the material world half of it because I have a body that can participate in this way. Can you help me with the other, like, field level tending? We can collaborate, right? This is the beauty of being in relationship with the spirits. That collaboration is worth everything. And so I feel this perhaps reality check, perhaps the illumination of what do we actually have to work with here? We have the dreams, we had the big vision. That's great. It's maybe a little bit of like idealizing that can get us going. It can get us inspired. It can give us something to move towards. And then what do we want to do about it? How do we ground it into tangibility? That's the second half of the battle. But the first half of the battle is having a vision worth believing in the first place. And I don't want to undersell that. You know? That's something that was another one of my hot takes is like, you know, we spend so much time looking off in the distance and thinking like, well, if we just did that, if we just went that way, grass is always greener on the other side. That's kind of a little bit of that shadowy Jupiter energy. It's wishful thinking. Grass is always greener on the other side, projecting and idealizing, right? If I just went over there, if I just made this change, things would be different. I've been sitting with a thing this week that is the curiosity of what if nothing needed to change? And I'd come back into myself. And then I can actually start to work with what I have going on. Something opens up in my present moment experience and the reality of what's actually here with me right now that I can move from. That's something to work with, right? All of this projecting and grass is always greener over there if I just do this, that's actually, there's not much to work with there other than create a strain and a pressure on myself that I'm not there yet, that I'm here. So the first question is like, okay, what if nothing needs to change about the whole conditions and life circumstances? And I can come back to myself and be like, all right, what opens up in the here and now? That doesn't mean that I don't make little adjustments and recalibrations, but it's a way of drawing myself back to the present moment to see what's actually here and appreciate what's working, appreciate what already is in my favor, what I already have available to me. This is the abundance mindset that I find to be actually really important. Because in that ache and dissonance we create, we're paying attention to what we don't have. When we do the grass is greener thing, or we project somewhere else in the future, we're focused on what we don't have yet. We're moving from a lack state. And sure, there's elements to which, like, we're also projecting our desired reality, but there's a very fine line between what that does to our consciousness that can really trap us in a lack mentality, where we are constantly agitated, we're constantly split and in this state of tension because we want what we don't have and we're not appreciating what we do have. We're not paying attention to what's right here under our own nose. And so for me, there's a loving reality check from the full blue moon that's like, hey, what happens if you actually redirect your attention to what's here right now, what's available to you in this present moment? And actually go through that to get to wherever else you're meant to go. But this ache and longing and split you have yourself in, to be honest, isn't really going to get you anywhere. It's just going to keep you in a state of feeling not enough and feeling the lack and scarcity of that. Totally unhelpful. It's not your fault. It's the messaging that comes from every direction in our culture. Just like grace with that. But it's something that I come back to reminding myself of often lately, where I have myself in this split state and agitation, where I'm like, man, all these dreams and visions and goals that feel so far out of reach, that's a recipe for feeling like really unsatisfied with your life. And it's a setup. That's how capitalism sets us up, right? Again, it's not no one's fault. But when I start to really vocalize, not just think about, but actually talk about and hear myself vocalizing what is working. Like, honestly, if you want a full blue moon ceremony, if you want a ritual to do, get everybody together in the same room and just talk about the things that you do have available to you. Not in a cringy way, in a very real way, because it's from that's your fertilizer right there. It's from that you can actually grow whatever it is, whatever else it is out there in that grand horizon. Vocalizing, giving energy. Vocalization is really powerful. Just saying the things out loud, hearing yourself say them, experiencing other people hearing you say those things. Talk about what's working. Talk about what you're grateful for. Talk about the success you've had over the past year. List in an abundant, ridiculous fashion everything that's working, and notice how it shifts your state. I'm not trying to be cringy here. I'm like, this is really real medicine. It has been for me, at least. I was talking to my sister the other day, and I started to talk about everything that's working, everything I'm really proud of myself for. And I started to cry because I'm like, damn, you know how little I give attention to that? And I noticed what it did to my system. It opened something up immediately. I was right back in a flow state. It like unblocked the hose where all that energy could actually properly move through me again. It's like, pay attention to what's working. Pay attention to where the water is flowing. And notice what that does to your state of being and your stories about yourself and the world. We start to shift the vantage point immediately of our own personal mythology. It's the difference between the main character energy of someone who is constantly longing for something they don't have and someone who is like fucking stoked about what they do. And that's an edgy thing because we have to reckon with also the stuff that we don't have and the stuff that we're suffering, but it provides resource in order for us to turn towards those things and hold both at once, which we need in this moment in time. We need the buoy, the resource. We need the feeling, the felt sense of like, oh, okay, our animal body needs to know that there are things that are working in our favor, that we are supported by these things that we can list and say out loud and claim about our life, right? Because if we're only focusing on what we don't have and what's not working, that's a recipe for a somatic survival state. and constant hunger, insatiable hunger. That's not super helpful. That's not fertilizer. That's a story that we have that our fields are barren. So, yeah, that's my full blue moon hot take. Let's see if there's anything else on my list. Yeah. I'll leave it with this. There was one last thing that came up as I was on the Oracle of Instagram the other day, and there's a tarot reader named Chelb. Maybe some of you know them. And I don't always watch those videos that are like, maybe this reading's for you, maybe not. I like Chelb though. They're real about it. And I knew, I had the felt sense. I'm like, oh, this one's for me. Like the moment I saw the video pop up and something they said, I just want to give them full credit for this. Something that they said was, it was this reading, and the heart of their message was like, if you feel like you're stuck, I'm paraphrasing here, but if you feel like you're stuck, you're cornered, things aren't moving, like there's agitation, there's a sense of stagnation, consider that you might be trying to fight a battle that isn't trying to fight you. I wanted to throw my phone across the room. I felt so called out. If you feel stuck right now, consider that you might be trying to fight a battle that isn't trying to fight with you. What happens when you release yourself from that grip? And actually like come back into your center. What if nothing needed to change? I mean, I'm a person who is like constantly agitated and restless, and I have, quite an impression of scarcity from like immigrant, impoverished, starved ancestors. I know the way that lives in my body, the hunger and the survival state that it creates, where there's constant agitation and like a constant feeling that you need to like work for and fight for what you want. You never rest when you're in that somatic patterning, right? And I felt called out by Chelb's reading because it's like, oh, that's what's familiar to me. That's what's just comfortable for me, is just being in a state of feeling like I need to fight the battle. I don't even know what the battle fucking is. I lost the plot. Now I'm just doing things out of habit. That's the thing about losing the plot. We lose the plot when we just start doing things on autopilot, out of habit. And so the way to find the plot is to like wake up in the dream and be like, what am I doing here? It's helpful main character energy to become conscious and question ourselves and take a moment to like notice where your attention is and notice the stories that you have about the way things are right now. That's the work of becoming awake in the dream, is like actually just becoming aware of the stories you're running through your circuits and how that's creating the patterns you're living into that cause you to lose the plot altogether and just go on autopilot, right? There's a wakefulness here. And I feel that so much from the full blue moon. There's a wakefulness. It invites us into a moment to come up for air and be like, what am I doing? I'm split in all these different directions. Here I am. Like, come back. It's like meditation, right? Our mind wanders. We go down the familiar neural pathways of thinking about this thing or that, and then we come back. And we do it again and we trail off, and then we come back. It's just a constant practice of coming back, returning again and again. And I feel some peace from the full blue moon that allows us to hold the possibility and the, dare I say, abundance mindset and the optimism alongside the real temperance and centeredness that's like, I can hold both of these things at the same time. I can have my big dreams and I can appreciate what's right in front of me. And the place where those two things meet is your world. That's what you have to work with. not one or the other. Rather than those things being at odds with each other and in a place of constant tension, find the place where they meet. Full blue moon, baby. 4:45 a.m. on May 31st, Eastern time, of course. So I'm probably going to be doing my full moon ritual of just speaking all the things I'm grateful for into the fire. That's it. It's that simple. And letting it be the fertilizer for all the other dreams and visions that I'm still holding in my view, but I'm not fixated on them in a way that creates constant scarcity and longing. So I'm going to do that on Saturday night, probably, May 30th. I want to leave it with one thing that my friend Aoife, I had to give Aoife a shout out. We had a conversation last week, and Aoife's just such a wealth of brilliance and genius, an Irish kin, and they said something that I'll leave y'all with. I had to give the shout out by the end. So much of our work and our brilliance and our creativity and our magic is in everything that you can't measure. They were talking about the metrics of especially how capitalism and our culture validates what is worth anything, what is worth something, by what you can measure, right? Especially now with social media culture, it's all about that. But what about everything that you can't measure? Can we appreciate that? And actually what happens when we center that, when we bring awareness to everything that we can't measure? To me, it's right in line with this kind of essence of like where your attention is. Where your attention goes, your energy flows. As corny as that shit is, it is so real. If you're fixated on lack or what you don't have or what you can measure, you're leaving behind everything that you do have and everything that you can't measure that is still worth so much, the magic that's there. So shout out to Aoife for that wisdom, and happy full blue moon. May you enjoy it. May you get together with your beloveds and have a fucking feast. And speak aloud over the fire and over the food everything that you're grateful for, everything that you're proud of yourself for, all the success, all the ways you made it through the hardest moments in your life. Tell your story, my friend, but tell your story from the perspective of someone who has actually lived to tell the tale and is proud and grateful for what they have. That is such big medicine right there. Such big fertilizer. And it's like, who's telling the story? Are we letting culture tell our story? Because it's more likely that that's going to be a narrative of insufficiency. It's a setup for that. Tell your story from the place of like, I fucking did that. And all of the support that was afforded by the beloveds in my life and the spirits and the ancestors, etc. Like, really bring your awareness to everything that's working in your favor and then see what happens, right? Just let it be the miracle grow and go from there. Love y'all. See you next week.